It's not desert season without a campfire or Chupacabra Offroad. Now, here's your host, Nick Olson.
What's happening, everybody? It's Chupacabra Offroad Around the Campfire podcast. It's Nick and Wes. What's happening, Wes?
How's it going, everybody? Good to be back.
Yeah, we're just a couple of off-road enthusiasts that can't get enough of it, mainly in the side-by-side UTV world. We're an accessories company, and this pod is all about Baja. Baja 500 just happened. I got to go do a several-day trip. Wes is down there as well. Unfortunately, Wes wasn't a part of the ride that I did, but Wes is part of a chase team in the trophy truck class. And if you've been following off-road racing world at all, you would know that the 500 had a ton of drama. So that's what we want to chat with tonight, a little bit of off-road.
Tons of drama.
So much drama. So, we got to touch on that. But before we get into that, we got to give Wes his props, because if you guys follow the TV show Destination Polaris, Wes is one of the main stars on the most recent episode.
Yeah, we had a good time a couple months ago back. It just aired this last weekend, and we got asked. Myself, I was able to go a part of the Roma Motorsports clan and go out and enjoy the Nevada desert for a couple of days, and see some stuff that I hadn't seen in a while, but also just to get out there and have some fun.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I grew up in Vegas. That's how Wes and I, met when we were youngsters. And right, the area where you were wasn't one of those areas near Nelson Hills, which is like literally my favorite dirt bike spot in Southern Nevada. It's kind of out below Boulder City. And I was trying to look at the geography and see if I recognize some of the area, because I've been out there dozens of times. Was that one of the areas by the river?
Yeah. So day 2, we went down and we started in Nelson, and I hadn't been down in Nelson forever because it was always known as a moto place, and I haven't had moto for a few years. And actually Nelson, you go back to like probably 15 years ago, we did a really big group ride out there. I don't know if you remember it. That was the first time I ever rode moto on my, I borrowed a bike, went on a moto day ride, and we climbed the cell phone tower and everything like that. I remember that day, and we had a really good time. Well, I hadn't been out there forever because I considered it a single track place and, not a big side-by-side place. And we, a friend of ours helped us create a file because he'd been out there several times. And man, we went to some cool spots, some of the funnest trails that I've ever been on. And it's just, hopefully this podcast doesn't make it to where everybody goes out there, but really, really fun trails, like for the side-by-sides. Obviously there's the single tracks up the washes for the dirt bike guys and stuff like that. But I mean, we did I would say about 50 miles, maybe 60 miles in a big loop, and went to a couple places. One place in particular was a place they call Flintstone or Bedrock, because you're out in the middle of the desert, everything's great, and all of a sudden you turn a corner and there's just car-sized boulders stacked on top of each other, house-sized boulders. And it was really cool because we got to go there. We had lunch. If you haven't seen the episode, you can look it up and watch it, and had lunch there that day. And, then we went up a little bit further. We were able to do the overlook down into the Colorado River, and then ended up in Nelson, the actual town of Nelson, and did a little bit of riding there. It was really, really fun. We had a good time, and I can't wait to go back there, actually. It's obviously 1,000,000 degrees right now, it being summertime in Nevada, but it'd be a fun place to do a night ride.
Yeah, I did various motorcycle desert races when I first got into that, and just all these little places that we did races outside of Pahrump, like northbound on the 95, little town of Mercury, near Mesquite. Like, there's so many cool spots around the Vegas Valley. So any of you listeners, if you guys are from Vegas too, comment on the comments. Let us know what your favorite spot is, or some spots that you think are awesome for UTVs. Because again, my only reference was dirt bike racing, desert racing, and the terrain was really cool. I mean, all around and just outside of town.
Yeah, Nelson's pretty cool. And I mean, it's good to know that there's a lot of trails out there that are side-by-side size now. So, it's going to be definitely a place that we can go riding even more now.
Speaking of dirt bikes, before we get into the Baja 500, we got to chat moto. I mean, Wes and I are big enthusiasts of outdoor motocross, supercross, blah, blah, blah. And, I just want to tell Wes that there's still room on the Ken Roczen bandwagon if he's not on it already. I'm really excited right now. 3 rounds in, we got Ken Roczen looking really good. I personally think it's going to be a 2-rider battle between him and Ferrandis, who's really killing it as a rookie on the 450. What do you think? I mean, Tomac actually showed up out of the blue. Like, what's up with Tomac, man? What do you think he's going to do?
I think Tomac in this stage of his career is in the slow starter stage. Everybody knows that he's a machine. I mean, you can see it through his personality. The outdoors has been his thing for quite a few years, to where he is, minus, Zach Osborne with what he pulled off last year. But I think Tomac, I mean, it's kind of scary. I mean, once he gets going, once he gets that confidence, and, I don't think it's ever a physical thing for him. I think it's more starts and technical stuff. I think that's why he has the issues that he has in Supercross. But yeah, I'm excited. You talk about the Kenny bandwagon. I've been on the Kenny bandwagon for like 10 years now. I want him to win every race. Hats off to Ferrandis though. Dylan Ferrandis, man, that guy, he's that European stuff comes out, man, and they ain't afraid to send it. I think I'd be having heart attacks and strokes and anxiety attacks just seeing the ruts in those corners and not knowing if I can even make the corners. So it's fun, man.
It's funny, like I've been a hater of the YZ450 pretty much ever since it went backwards motor in 2010. And people like yourself, all Yamaha YZ450s, all of our buddies have been ragging on you because that bike has pretty much been cursed. I think they haven't won a championship in forever. It's funny now that the Star bikes are not tuned by factory Yamaha. Look at how much better Passenger and Ferrandis looked the last couple rounds of Supercross and now.
Right.
It's really cool to see Mookie running outdoors this year as well, because the YZ450 is now, I mean, Ferrandis is killing it, and that bike has not been up front at all, hardly at all in the last 10 years.
I mean, I don't know if it's the difference between Supercross and the outdoors that makes the bikes shine in their elements, but it has, this season has been the Honda show. If you look at it and then you throw Ferrandis in there and that bike's going good, man. Like, you see Sexton and Roxon, and their bikes just seem faster. I don't know if it's the riders or the bikes, but then you look at the KTMs who, ruled Supercross for a couple of years and been most consistent, and they're struggling. Now, I think it's more rider than that. I mean, I am on another bandwagon, the Cooper Webb. Hopefully he doesn't get a top 10 bandwagon. So if you're on that bandwagon, go ahead and comment below. But so, yeah, I mean, it's fun, man. Like I said, I'm into it this year, watching the outdoors, and it's fun to watch. And, as a guy that rode a little bit of moto, and Nick's rode lots of moto, man, those guys, they can rip, man. I mean, I can't imagine doing that long of a moto at that high of a rate of pace, or even half that rate of pace.
Baddest dudes on planet Earth, top of the food chain in all of motorsports, all of action sports. Everybody knows it's all about moto. So, all the rest of this other stuff is really one step below. It's just, like you said, it's 90% rider. And, I'm not so much of a Cooper Webb fan these days. He is really mentally tough, and definitely not a fan, because he really laid it down in Supercross. You got to give him props, and he really defeated Ken. So I really enjoy him fading back to 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th place right now. I never thought he's really put up really good results in the 450s outdoors. So we'll see if he actually gets a couple top fives. I don't really think he'll be a factor. I think
the taller riders really excel for the most part. I mean, not always, but I think that the taller riders really excel in the outdoors more than the shorter riders. Just because it's easier to be comfortable when the course gets sketchy, things like that. You have that better control of the bike, I guess, is what I would think. But
yeah,
it's not always the case, not always the case.
Ricky's the GOAT, and he's only 5'4.5" on a good day.
Yeah, but I think prime Ricky, he is like Ricky. He's awesome, but I think Ricky in his prime in racing at the pace that they're racing nowadays, and the amount of freaking talent that is out there. Not to take anything from Ricky, because I'm not, but I think that he might not be the top dog right now.
Yeah.
It's just a different game. I mean, they've just excelled so far in the last 10, 12 years. It's just crazy.
Well, we'll keep bringing up moto. I mean, I'm sure the season's going to develop as we get into some more of these pods. My only comment on Tomac is I don't think he's going to be a champion contender. I do think he's going to show up and kill everybody at Southwick, because he always does. But I think he's just kind of – sounds like this deal with Yamaha is already signed, and he's already – selling all of his green clothing and repainting his garage blue from what the internet rumors are saying. So maybe there's some bad blood there. I heard they're not giving him factory parts. He's over it. He's just riding it out. Who knows? But I think him, same thing with Adam C. Adam C's showing blinding speed here and there, but I want to see Adam C put together 5 or 6 actual motos without a dumb tip over before I'd say he's actually going to be a title threat. I do think he'll win some motos. I do think he will take some podium spots, but I don't know. Adam C's saying blinding speed, but yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that whole career is like kind of, I mean, he's such a fast rider at Cinderella, and I love watching him, and you want him to do well, but I mean, he just seems to, he's such a talent, but it just doesn't have the full package there. And I don't know if it's because he always gets his speed up and then injured and then gets his speed up and injured. That's got to be a rough way, but I don't know. We'll see, man. We're only 3 races in. So
Yeah.
we got to, I mean, the last race is until the second week of September. Like, I mean, it's going to be a crazy summer. So,
yeah, no doubt. All right. Well, enough moto. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about, the Baja 500. So if you guys follow channel, it's on our YouTube channel. We just got the video live. It's pretty long. It's 25 minutes. We kind of try to switch up a little bit of how we shoot. I had another person on the trip, this guy named Michael, who really helped shoot a lot more content. We tried to kind of switch up the style a little bit from what we've done and getting a lot of good feedback on that. So let me know if you guys like the Baja vid. But basically, you know, I went with a small group. We had 4 cars and we pre-ran the whole course. We did a little offshoot. The video and the whole trip was sponsored by Onyx Offroad, a GPS off-road app. So it's really cool, those guys coming on board. Our first sponsor, I think we talked about it on the pod a while ago, but they sponsored a Moab trip, which you were part of, and they'll be sponsoring a Glamis trip later this year. So either way, as a Ricky racer, a part-time racer, I've always wanted to pre-run an actual race course, right? You know, Wes, every year, and Wes, you've really been in it. You've been part of a chase team down there for what, 5, 6, 7 years?
yeah, about 7 years now.
And they always say on the podium, this was the hardest Baja 500 ever. This was the roughest, right? And I always want to know, like, how hard was it? And we got pretty much as close as you could maybe get to it without racing, because we rode it a couple days before. I guarantee it was a lot rougher than what we saw on race day, of course. But, you know, seeing how they mark the course, seeing where they put the VCPs really kind of gives you an idea of, like, the strategy, especially, of course, the top guys who have the time and the money to go for the win, have the time to do the pre-run. But, and then see how hard the course was. And Wes, like, I want to kick it off with this topic. You know, the UTVs beat all the class 10 cars, which I think is the first time that's ever happened in a 500 or a 1000. They have done that at a couple other races, like Silver State maybe, and been close many a time, but they haven't actually beat all of them. And of course, all the talk and trophy truck is 4-wheel drive. So, you know, you might not know this, but I'm curious to ask people that you rub elbows with, like, has the course design of Score gotten rougher, more difficult, something that suits a 4-wheel drive better, slower, more technical, something that UTVs are naturally going to excel on, and of course a 4-wheel drive trophy? Is it just the bump in technology as well over the last 10 years? What's the mixture of both? But it'd be interesting to, like, chat with somebody like a Cameron Steele, or people who've, like, really lived Baja racing for the last decade, and curious, like, has Jose G, has a team at Score really tried to make a hard, I mean, because we're going up, like, the section right after Mike's, like, I couldn't believe class 11 cars could even get up it, or even a 16 car.
Right. Now, I don't think the Score actually thinks about that when they mark these courses, but the technology and the advancement in these 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, whatever you want to call them, these trucks, is just amazing. They are just easier to drive. Now, that being said, in that slow, twisty, turny, loose, silt, all that stuff, I mean, there's nothing better than having all 4 wheels spinning and having unlimited power. So obviously they're going to excel in all that type of stuff. Now, you know, you still have these fast 2-wheel drive guys, you know, the Ampudias, and, you know, Luke just barely got in his all-wheel drive. And I mean, his truck ripped. You know, you go over to the San Felipe side, and where you're pinned at, you know, 120 going through whoops, and it's obviously going to be probably better in a 2-wheel drive truck because it's just lighter and it's faster. And so as far as, like, Score, if they're doing that, I don't think they're doing anything. I just think that that's the way that it's going, and that the 4-wheel drive is just going to be faster. It's just going to, I mean, you're gaining a half a second in every corner. I mean, it adds up, you know, because you're able to hit that gas and go. And, you know, speaking of the side-by-sides beating the class 10s, if somebody would have told me before this race that would have happened, I probably would have said, you're probably right. Considering the amount of slow speed stuff from once you leave Valley T and you get all the way over to the beach, and I don't know, there's some fast sections in there, but they're not a fast section. I would say that a UTV is just going to excel in there. A UTV is going to be going, you know, as fast as they need to go. I mean, a UTV, you can stop in the sill. You could stop in the sill, you could back up, and you could go again. Yeah. You're not doing that in a 10 car. You're not doing that in a 16 car. You're not doing that in a 12 car. And honestly, you're not going to do that in a 6100 truck. It's just not going to happen because the power to weight ratio just doesn't work that way.
And that's what I
So
wanted to say, like before we get into the trophies, UTVs, it seemed like the race course in the simplest form, the first half was technical. The second half coming back up the beach was fast. There's variations of both, but tracking the race, I think Blurton was out front by around the halfway point, right, in the Can-Am and Ripon. And they had put quite a bit of time, but I did watch the 10 car really eat up a lot of time coming back up the beach. I know they can run a higher top speed, and there was some fast rough stuff where I remember going through it, and we're talking like around San Vicente, around 340 to 370, there was
okay.
some rough stuff where you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, like a 10 car would eat us alive through here for sure. It was big whoops. It was rough. It was
Right.
like you had to probably meter your speed in a UTV. But then you had a technical last section there, back up to the finish. So I guess my point is, I'd say the 10 guys, maybe guys who are in the two-wheel drive, they'd probably say, oh, well, a lot of these course designs with the silt beds, there's these major pileups. What was it? Race mile 176. And then these UTVs can just go over whatever and get up stuff. And everybody else can get stuck behind each other. Where, like you said, the UTV has that ability because it's lightweight to do that. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's just some observations of being on the course, which is really exciting. And then watch how the race pans out, watch the overall times. It's really interesting. It's cool as a fan of the sport to get to run the actual course and then hear what they're talking about and say, oh yeah, I remember exactly where that silt bet was. And some of the silt, like they talked about 190 was not that bad because there was a beautiful line around it when we went through it. So, it's just kind of interesting to see how the cookie crumbles. But I will say we didn't see a whole lot of pre-runners, but it's like pre-running nowadays is UTVs or the top guys with trophy truck pre-runners. There's really not much in between.
A lot of the trophy truck guys are using UTVs to pre-run in. It's just they're easier. They're easier to get into the places, and they're less expensive. You don't have to prep a whole big, huge pre-runner in order to get it done. But do you remember what the time gaps were between the top 10 and the top side-by-side? How much did side-by-side win by overall? Or, yeah.
How much did a side-by-side beat a Class 10 car? Or it was sizable. It was more than a few minutes.
Okay.
It was a clear win.
Looking at this course, I would say that, 10, I don't think the 10 guys need to think that anything crazy is happening and, the golf cart guys are coming in and trying to take over. I don't think that at all, because I think even the top racers and the people who race these side-by-sides, they understand these 10 cars have unlimited suspension. They don't have all the horsepower in the world, but man, when those things get going, with those transmissions and they get going, they're going to eat up stuff that we're going to check up for every single time. Like they can just do that. So I think your longer races, their Baja 1000s, which are going to have a lot more high speed sections, I don't think a side-by-side is going to have much for a 10 car and those types of things. For instance, they did that King of Hammers Class 10 versus UTV race. Speaking to some of the guys that raced the UTVs against them, they pushed their cars so hard to near breaking points, just trying to stay pace. And it wasn't. We were watching that race, and I think the first 7 cars through were Class 10s. Yeah, and they did a qualifier, and I think Blurton and Whalen, they were like 3rd and 4th qualifiers, and there was like at least 7 10 cars that came through in that race. So I think it's just the way the course was. I think that tight, twisty, loose, silty, windy, all that type of stuff, it just benefits the side-by-sides,
That's why I kind of posed the question about course design, because let's call it what it is. The Score Baja 500 and the Baja 1000 are the top 2 of any other off-road events in the world, especially in our in our continent.
Yes.
So, whatever Score racing is, that's what it is. Like the King of the Hammers is a huge event, Best on Desert's big, but that's why I'm curious if you think that they are making more technical courses, if what they want the Baja experience to be, because they know that going through certain areas are going to get silty. Pre-run, people are still going to pre-run. People love to pre-run in Baja, that's part of the whole experience. And obviously based on what course design they're going to do, we saw some sections that look like they were new and fresh, and they're always trying different routes. And I've heard Cameron Steele comment on that on a couple of those after race shows. So it's just kind of a question. It'd be fun to chat with some people who really have lived it on the racing world and see what they've seen. But moving on to the trophy truck class, man, it was an amazingly exciting race to try to track. You're pitting with Menzies, so let's just hear about your pitting experience with the guy who was first qualifier, first on course, and leading the charge almost halfway through the whole race.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that this race, up until the time that we had to pull the plug, was amazing. Like, it was one of the only races that I sat there and just tracked it like nonstop, just to see if the gaps open up, if they don't open up, listening to the radio, because you had us, then you had Luke, and you had Andy, and you had Ampudia, the top 4 trucks. I know Jax had a little bit of issues, so there was a couple minute gap after that. But those top 4 trucks, they were within the minute of each other all the way up to 225.
Yeah,
Now,
we saw all of them at race mile 70. Like you said, they were all bumper to bumper, man. It was,
yeah,
I know that's only 70 miles, but it was,
it's crazy.
You knew it was game on, and all 4 of those dudes could win for sure.
And I mean, we had a good game plan, you know, being up front and having a great vehicle, a great working vehicle, and, you know, having it dialed and everything ready. We were all for, as long as we don't cut a tire or somebody get around us during a pit, we were all excited for Bryce to get to the beach. And I think that the other guys weren't very excited about Bryce getting to the beach, because I honestly feel as though if Bryce had the truck running 100% when he got to the beach, it was going to be game over at that point. It would have been somebody else. And I mean, that could be biased, you know, not knocking Luke, because it was so good in a brand new truck. And Andy, you know, he's always there. I mean, those guys are just on it. But it's funny because
Wes in Score Desert Racing in 2021, the game over is like 6 days later now, thanks to cell phone cameras and drama.
No, that's very true. And, you know, we knew there's going to be some penalties before we were even done. And, you know, people have talked about in the Fishgistics show, and the Stellas not working and this and whatever. And, you know, some Stellas are reading fast, some Stellas are reading slow. But what I don't understand with these guys, with these $1 million trophy trucks, is who cares what the Stella says? Who cares? The only reason you have that Stella is so that they can track you, and so that you can push to pass that nobody's going to listen to anyway. Other than that, you have a James Lynn wired truck that, you know, he probably charged you $100,000, $80,000 for everything they put into that truck. And it tells you how fast you're going. No trophy truck driver should get a speeding penalty ever, because you can pull the data. And I know that Score doesn't like to do that, but who cares if you're Stella is saying that you're going 41, and you look at your Motec and you look at your GPS and they're saying 37. That's all that matters. And there was a point where Oren was saying that, because we knew that Luke was catching. Yeah, we knew that Luke was catching Bryce, but they weren't speeding any speed sections. And at that point, they said, let him catch us. It don't matter. We are not going to get a speeding penalty. And obviously we didn't get one, but we didn't finish. We had some issues with the fuel of the truck.
And just to add a little context real quick, you know, if you guys aren't familiar with Score Baja Racing, you know, there's on-road sections to connect off-road sections. They're a 37 mile per hour speed limit, and all these trucks that were all set up to where they'll shut down and only go 37 to avoid these penalties. You click
a button, hold the gas to the floor, the truck will not go over 37 miles an hour. And then if it's off just a little bit, there's a dial, there's an up one, up or down one, and you can hit the buttons and you can adjust the speed while your driver just has it matched to the floor. And it don't matter how far he pushes the gas pedal, it won't go any faster.
And then also too, if you're not that familiar with Baja Racing, those roads are live open highways that regular pedestrians are going on. And then all of us that are enthusiasts or your chase teams like Wes are heading down to help chase your vehicle. So that's just how Baja Racing works. The fans are always been a huge part of the sport. They're right next to it. I mean, we were shooting some content. Look at the end of our Baja video. We're right next to them ripping at us at 100 miles an hour and slowing down. You know, it's awesome. There's nothing like it in terms of just being enthusiastic, working for a chase team, or just watching the sport. But, you know, and also one thing Wes brought up before we get into it here, there's a great wrap-up show that just happened, Fishgistics, Facebook, YouTube, but they had a couple of the top racers. Some of the names we're going to mention that got penalties. So it was cool to listen to their point of view, If you guys haven't seen on social, like Wes will kind of break it down. I got all these little bullet points, and then Wes just tell people, if they haven't seen, what the clip was, what happened, and then like the response from the driver, and like kind of like our personal thought on each of the elements that happened that made this Baja 500 incredibly dramatic.
Well, it was already dramatic as it was. Leading up to, before we even got to 225, where Bryce lost the lead. Going back a few miles, there was a crash where one of these trucks, driven by Andy McMillan, was in a pit stop. His pit stop gets done, he pulls out, and what people don't understand, and just a little context, like Nick said, in Mexico, it's a live race course. There's not there's a pit area, 25-mile-an-hour zone, everybody stop and get a pit. You choose where your pits are, you choose when you pit, and it's live race course. So there's trucks that can be going by you at 100, 130 miles an hour, and they don't have to lift. So it's a lot of skill on coming to these pit plans. So Andy McMillan pulls out of his pit. The Ampudias were coming up behind him, and there's nowhere to pass. If you don't take the opportunity to pass somebody, there's going to be so much blinding dust that you're just going to have to sit back in the dust and hope that your gap isn't a minute with the minute intervals between the trucks. And Ampudia ended up giving Andy a little tap at high speed, missed a turn, smacked a huge car-sized rock, rolled his truck. He's out of it. So then the top three trucks are still running. They're exact same truck build. Obviously, they have different motors and different drives and different tires and things like that. And get to about 220-ish. Bryce cuts a tire. Co-rider gets out, changes the tire. He gets to 225. We re-rack a tire. As we're re-racking a tire into the truck, that's when Luke gets around. We were already struggling, though, with some fuel standing issues. Andy comes, we get out. So we're third. But by the time we got to the beach, we didn't have anything for him. Bryce is not going to hold people up to, save face. He knows his truck wasn't running. And at that point, it turned into really a two-man show. Luke McMillan out in front and Andy McMillan, his cousin, fighting back and forth on who's going to win. And Andy, according to what we had, Andy had him pretty much the entire race. Andy was corrected winner when he passed us, or corrected leader at 225, and he was running a really, really good race. He was right there. He knows where he has to be. He's very meticulous. He's very smart. He's very about the times. And about mile 300 to get on the highway section. And as Nick said, these are live highways. So you have local traffic, people who could care less about off-road. I know that when we're down there, you think that everybody loves it and everybody's about it, but it's really not the case. And the problem with this is that it's still a live race course. Even though it's 37 miles an hour, you can lose more time in a speed zone being stuck behind slower traffic and semi-trucks than you'll lose on a flat-out 125-mile-an-hour section. Way more time. Because if you're going 25 because there's traffic and your competitor is going 37, that gap just is getting huge.
And this year's race course, to add a little more context, had like 30 or 40 miles of highway.
Yes.
And people kind of complained it was kind of a lot. It was on the heavier side of the highway. So that, like you said, that would add up over 40 miles of a whole.
Yes.
When these guys are like, when I was tracking them, West, it looked like they could probably see each other's dust a lot of the race, which was incredibly exciting.
Guaranteed. And Andy actually said that when after his incident, which I'll explain in a second, he could see Luke. He could see his truck. And that's got to feel great when you're chasing somebody down and you can see them and they're doing everything to get away from you and you're just doing it and you're able to keep up. So right around mile 300, Andy jumps on the highway. His pit is just up the road. Luke's pit is just up the road also. So they're both going to do a pit stop. And I think this heat of the moment, Andy gets basically in a traffic jam where it stopped. And I don't know from the video, it doesn't look like he nudged the guy. Some people say he did nudge the guy, but he darts out and goes and do a pass because it's only a 2-lane highway. And this is the major highway. This is the highway that runs from Tijuana all the way down to Cabo, 2-lane highway. Like it's used for commerce. Yes. Anybody that gets produce in the United States, this is where the majority of your produce comes in the Southwest, your avocados, your asparagus, everything. They grow everything down here. So it's a busy area, and it ends up making a pass, and a car, even though they were only going about 5 miles an hour, car kind of had to pull off the road to let Andy go around. Score considered that an unsafe pass on the highway, and he was given a 30-minute penalty. So you don't know about these penalties until you get to the finish, and honestly, you don't know about them until the next day or the day after, because Score's got to figure it out. So the race continues on. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. So if you didn't follow the race, Andy got a penalty, but Andy and Luke finished within seconds of each other.
Correct.
So at the very end of the finish line, it's right before dark, and people are saying a couple seconds is coming down to, right? This is before we know before the video leaks, before we know there's a penalty.
Right.
And right as we're coming into the finish line, Luke, who was leading on the road, gets into a little bit of drama himself.
Right. So Luke makes up a lot of time. So like I said, Andy had him, I think it was like 45 seconds corrected. He was winning the race. Andy was winning the race. So Luke stepped it up. And, just so you guys know, this is 490 miles?
460-ish, yeah.
Yeah. 466, right? I think is what it was. Of those 466 miles, it was at the finish, it was 4 seconds. Luke ended up corrected winning by 4 seconds. So that's 1 minute and 4 seconds in front of Andy. So Luke, who's coming up over the mountains and coming back in, they basically come in coming in Sonata the same way they went out, but you don't get a pre-run the way in. You only get a pre-run the way out. Luke makes a mistake, misses a turn. It's kind of a fork in the road, and he's trapped. And he's stuck between a rock and a hard place, considering there's people everywhere, camp set up. You can't go backwards on the course. If you go backwards on the course, it's a penalty. And so he pulls up to this camp that he needed to basically drive through. There were some tents set up. Guy walks over. You don't really see, from the video, you don't really hear the audio. According to Luke and to his co-writer, Duncan, they were yelling at the guy like, hey, and the guy kind of they said to the guy, said, yeah, go ahead, and lifted the tent out of the way, and he drove through it. Apparently, I guess that's not. They recorded
it on their cell phone.
Yeah. Apparently, that's not what happened, and they were upset or whatever. So Luke gets to the finish, and it is the weirdest thing ever. There's no smile on Andy's face. There's no smile on Luke's face. Luke even said that they're like, okay, get on the stage. We're going to give you the unofficial win, spray the champagne, hold the flag. He said, no, I'm not going up there. I need to talk to Jose G. And this happened out of 466 miles. This happened 5 miles from the finish. And the last few miles is like a speed zone. So heat of the battle, you're running, your guys are telling you, hey, Andy's beating you. You got to go, you got to go, you got to go. And then this happens, and you're just sunk. The amount of money and the amount of effort that these drivers put in to win these races, and to have it at that point, I get it. It's gut wrenching, whether you crash like Amputia's at halfway through the race, or you have a fuel issue at mile 300 like Bryce, and the amount of money and everything that you do, it's just gut wrenching. But to know that you can win the race 5 miles from the finish, and that's, the issue. So that night, they said that Luke had some speeding penalties. And so they made Andy the unofficial winner. Andy gets the flag. Andy pops the champagne. And we think it's Andy's race, and then Luke's going to get second. Well, all of a sudden the next morning, the unofficial results show Luke actually won by 4 seconds, and Andy got a 30-minute penalty, which still places him in second place. And then Larry Rossler was in third. And now all of a sudden, everything starts going crazy. This video goes viral, and the tent video, and then Andy's video of him running people off the road at 5 miles an hour. And then Larry Rossler was attached to a video where a chase truck made an unsafe pass and almost killed a family and ran them off the road. And then that family actually was videoing the inside of the car when the chase truck was coming at them. So every keyboard warrior in the off-road industry all starts giving their opinions. And Score goes, and they actually have a review board, which is racers, it's organization, event guys, it's local people. I don't know exactly who's all on it. I do know that Larry Rossler was supposed to be on it, but he excluded himself because it was going to affect him, And Score came out with the penalties, and Andy stuck with his 30-minute penalty. Luke's speeding penalties, which, sorry, Luke, I know for a fact those were legit, And I feel as though Score just removed those because they never remove speeding penalties. I figure they just remove them because the overall penalty that Luke was given for the tent thing was a disqualification. Moves Larry Rossler up to first place. Larry Rossler becomes your official winner of the Baja 500. Andy's second place. And yeah, it was just the weirdest. It went from the funnest, craziest race to watch in the trophy truck class to
6
the weirdest
days
things that
of
ever
social
happened.
media drama, and the
And you know, and
to win another race.
in my opinion,
An asterisk.
Luke did not deserve a disqualification.
I agree.
Did he deserve a penalty?
To his point, I didn't realize he couldn't back up on the course without a penalty. And the wrong turn he made up on the road, there was someone parked at the end of that road. So he was literally on a little wedge road with tents, people camping, feet from the race course.
And a lot of people were like, well, if you watch the video, he's like nudging and he's like telling the guy get out of the way, and he's like he's gonna run him over anyway. And then a lot of people don't understand with these transmissions in these trucks, they're paddle shifted, they shift at certain RPMs. So he was actually downshifting his vehicle, and that's why it would nudge. And it didn't move; it just makes a nudge like this. So people who didn't know thought that it looked really bad. And the one person though that didn't really say much about their penalty, which was surprising, was Andy. Like, Andy didn't think, like, he was fine with his penalty. And I think in hindsight, if Luke would have got a 30-minute penalty, I think Andy would have been very upset. And I think Andy's very happy, even though they're family. This is just my opinion. I might be wrong. But I think Andy is happy that Luke was disqualified because Bryce is out, gets a DNF. Luke basically gets a DNF on points. And so now it's between Andy and somebody else for a points championship, which means
Pudia also DNFs, another
and Pudia is out. So the three guys that you'd be fighting for a championship for, I mean, Rossler's right there too, but he's still going to be down points because he didn't do so well in he was down in San Felipe. And now Andy's okay. I got second place. Sounds good to me. And he can move on. And Bryce's championship is over, and Pudia's championship is over, and Luke's championship is over. And I get it. Bryce made his decision because the truck wasn't running right, and Pudia's crashed. That's another thing. But I feel so bad for Luke McMillan. I don't think it was right. I think Score got it wrong. I think even if they would have gave him an hour penalty, I still think that he deserved it.
Winning a championship.
I don't feel as though he endangered people's lives. I don't feel as though he did something that was completely disrespectful or anything. I just feel that it was heat of the moment. Maybe it would have been better if he would have backed up and turned around and took the backwards on course penalty and got second place. I know he wasn't thinking that at the time because they're trying to win.
Yeah, I mean, they're within seconds.
Yeah, and everybody's been there. It don't matter what you've done in sports. It don't matter if you're a race car driver or if you've played this sport or that sport. You just don't think straight when it's all on the line. And we'll see. The McMillans are a great family, and I think that Luke's going to come back and he's going to try to win every single race, even just to stick it to people and to show. And, he's a very, I wouldn't say he's a very talkative type guy, but he spoke his piece and how he felt about it, and he's going to move on, and he's not going to badmouth Score. He's not going to badmouth, certain things. And it's just one of those things. It's kind of a sour taste. And before I let you in, Nick, Rossler, who has won more races than anybody, and he's won them on moto and won them in several different classes and trophy truck class and everything like that. He said it best. He's like, I was happy with third place. I was over the moon about third place. He's like, I was doing it for the team. To get a podium was the most amazing thing that we could have done. And he's like, it's not the way I wanted to win a race. You got to accept it. You got to take it as the official winner. And he's like, I'm gonna accept it as the winner. But he's like, it's definitely not the way that I want, because you get that little asterisk next to it type of thing that, well, if Luke didn't do this or if Andy didn't do that, you would have got smoked type of thing. So hats off to Larry Rossler for, being that guy and being a class for the sport.
Yeah, like you said, I agree. I think Luke McMillan's penalty was too harsh on a DQ. Luckily, like we've kind of talked about in our sport, I don't know what's more important for racers, for an overall championship or individual wins, like especially when you're talking about the Baja 1000. So Luke could still come back, win the Baja 1000, the biggest race of the year, which, you know, I'm sure would be a huge, massive accomplishment, maybe even mean more to him or mean more to a lot of racers than a complete championship. So who knows? I mean, everyone looks at that differently. But, you know, as we kind of wrap up here, Wes, you know, a lot of this stuff happened. Score racing in Baja is wild. There's been some changes over the years to try to make it safer. What do you think, you know, rule wise? I mean, the speed zones, you know, pitting on the highway. What do you think are, I think, because this was brought up in the wrap up show with some of the guys, maybe not proposed solutions, but, you know, what do you think could make, because the sport's always going to be exciting. We want the fans to be safe. Everyone wants everyone to be safe. You know, ultimately, there's been fatalities over the years. It's hardcore. It's gnarly. You know, like you said, it's 100 miles an hour. And Pudia brought up like one of the sections near Coyote where I stayed the first night. That guy's ranch, there should be a speed zone where they're ripping at 100 right by his fence post. You know, I think everyone is in favor of safety. What do you think would be some potential changes Score could make? Because like you said, the truck drivers were complaining about the Stellas. There's some things that are happening, this kind of money, this level. A lot of people complain about the results taking days. Like, what does Score need to do? What can they do? What can we learn from all this and make racing safer? Hopefully prevent some of these penalties and let these big dogs just duke it out in a safe manner for a top dog.
Well, I kind of agree with what was said on that show, and I'll explain what they were talking about. For one, I think that highway speed zones need to be an untimed area. They did this a couple years ago at the Baja 400, and yeah, it takes more manpower and it takes more time to figure it out on the computer. But guess what? There was a section of highway that was dangerous that semi trucks would go up. It was a short hill climb about 3 miles long. But if you get stuck behind a semi and there's 10 cars behind the semi and then you come up in your race truck, what other option do you have than to try to make unsafe passes so that you don't lose your race on a highway? Because the guy behind you is not going to do the same thing. And, you know, so I think the Score needs to make those speed zones untimed, whether that's a 10-minute window to go to go 5 miles. You can do whatever you want, but your clock starts at 10 minutes. You know, it's easy. They can set one guy at the exit for the speed zone. That particular year in the Baja 500, it was the crossover road from Valley T, and then it went south towards Guerrero Negro, and then there was a zone there, and I think it was a 15-mile zone, and they had 22 minutes to get to back to their start point, and then your clock's again.
Yeah, and speaking of this, you know, a lot of Class 10s and UTVs got speed penalties. So would this negate the whole speeding penalty scenario? I mean, obviously people could still speed and get in trouble, but you know, not all cars are sophisticated as the trophy trucks in terms of push a button, keep your car below 37. You know, and we were talking about, we both raced UTVs. Like, it would be really hard to keep it at or under 37 for 10 miles at a time, 4 different times throughout the Baja 500.
Yeah,
so, you know, do you think that's also something they were just extra harsh on penalties, or what can we do to mitigate penalties? Because you'd like to see the winner get announced at the finish, but you know, there's always going to be cell phone tapes of people, you know, right, from the famous Tavo Vildosa front bumper guy moment. Right. But what do you think about that?
So I think with the one we're talking about with the highway speeds, and if they make that a non-timed area, I think that's going to, one, keep your unsafe lane passes. It's going to keep your drivers safe and spectators and people who don't care about off-road racing or traveling on the highway. It's going to keep them safe, and it's going to keep it honest. As far as the speeding penalties other places, because you mentioned like El Coyote, where they're going right through there at full speed, definitely should be a speed zone. I don't know why they can't do a speed zone. I don't understand why they couldn't do one. I mean, they should. It's easy. Best in Desert does it at every single one of their pits. You go in, it's a must stop. You mark it as a must stop, and it's a 25-mile-an-hour zone. And then guess what they put at the end of the pit? Resume race speed, and you hit the gas, and you'll be able to tell if somebody's speeding there. I think that's what needs to be happening inside the dirt areas of the race course. But I think also one of the biggest problems they have right now is the Stellas. I think that the majority, what was it? They said less than 10 or 15 cars didn't get a speeding penalty in this entire race.
So like 80-90% of the race cars got a penalty.
I think it's based on the Stella, in my opinion, and I could be completely off base. And I explained this to you earlier, Nick, is that I feel as though that if these Stellas aren't calibrated, and you feel as though you're looking at your GPS, which is a speed, you're looking at your speedometer, which is speed, and they're going to be very, very close. When I'm in the car, I'm looking at the GPS. I don't pay attention to our tracker speed, and I look down at the speedometer, and that's how I tell my driver to go the speed. And then we very, very, very rarely get any type of penalties when it comes to speed. I think in this case, I think we had some Stellas that weren't calibrated, that your GPS could say 37 and your speedometer said 37, but your Stella said 20 or 30. So these individuals thinking, oh, well, the Stella is what matters. So we're going to make up some time because we got a Stella that's, this is great. I don't think that signal, and this could be completely wrong, I don't think the actual signal that's being tracked it's always going to be correct. It's going to be a satellite thing that's always going to be correct, regardless of what that digital display needs. So I think as though that digital display on the Stellas, because it's not calibrated, that's why people were going 37 on their GPS. They were going 37 on the speedometer, and then their Stella was saying 35, and they went 2 miles an hour faster, and they got a penalty for it. And I think that's what happened. I think that there's a problem with the Stellas. I think the amount of money that's put into these races and people pre-running and just millions of dollars, accumulated, for the, it's going to leave people a sour taste in their mouth that a tracker is what costs them the race.
Yeah. 2021, there's got to be a trackers that can issue the penalty. Hey, you got popped at mile marker 105.
Yeah.
Plan on, 1 to 4 minute penalty, whatever it is.
Exactly. And there are times where some people have had a bad day and they're like 2 hours down and they just speed no matter what. And we've had situations in Best of Desert that are similar, that the tracking things that they use there, same thing. I've been in a race where we were going the speed limit through a long speed zone, and a 10 car that I know the driver walked completely away from us. Just see ya. Gone. And this was like a 3 mile speed zone. Gone. We get to the end. The next day we got results. We got a penalty. I looked up for that 10 car. No penalty. And that's the thing, is that these guys are like, man, I spent millions of dollars. Am I speeding? Am I not? Well, we'll just figure it out. No, we'll tell Jose G that no, we weren't speeding, and we'll show them. And then Score doesn't want to look at their data, off of their computers, off their trucks, because Score doesn't trust their trucks. And Score needs to sit their butts down with Stella and say, look, this was a great system. It worked great for a couple of races. Now you guys need to put some money into it, and you need to fix the problem. There's no reason that only 10 cars out of this entire fleet of vehicles racing didn't get a speeding penalty, and that you had pretty much every UTV but Brandon Sims, every single UTV but Brandon Sims got a penalty, speeding. And Brandon said it. I didn't pay attention to my Stella. My co-writer, we look at the GPS, we look at our speedometer. We don't even pay attention to the Stella. Don't pay attention to it. And look what happened. He didn't get a speeding penalty, no matter what his Stella said, because he was going the speed limit. So those are my things. I think that they definitely, the highway speed zones, for one, to make it safe for everybody, no time there. And it makes it a much safer race, much better, much more clean. The people can't complain about it. People can't say, because there's a lot of rumors, man. I've heard rumors of certain teams having semi trucks ready to go and blocking. I mean, I'm not joking. Like, this really happens. It's cutthroat down there, and it's like the Wild West, and it kind of puts a sour taste in my mouth as, I want to race the Baja 500. I want to race the Baja 1000, say I can, or I did, but that's a whole nother topic. But if it's not clean and you don't know if you can even win, even if you do everything correctly, Score's going to figure it out, or they're going to lose in the long run.
Yeah. That's totally what I was thinking. And just to kind of close up, I've been a part of a couple Best in Desert races, Vegas, Reno, did part of Parker race this year, done a couple UTV races. And man, just pre-running Baja would be the ultimate adventure, the ultimate bucket list to race. And all of this, unfortunately, just kind of leaves a black eye on score racing. And, there's nothing like Baja with all that type of terrain, the open mileage, the Wild Westness that does make it so exciting and compelling. And, it is on a whole different level. It is a significantly, more costly, but man, I mean, we're chasing adventure, we're chasing fun. And Mexico is, far more exciting, in my opinion, from what I know, than racing any race in the US. Vegas Reno, I guess, is the only thing you can maybe compare it with. And it's rocky technical terrain. It's not just graded roads, like I like that stuff. I like technical riding. So
I agree.
I to kind of close up, like just talking about riding down there in general in Baja. I mean, we did a trip together back in 2017. You've done some off-roading, more chasing, I guess you could say. Like, I mean, what would you tell people listening to this pod who maybe casual race enthusiasts, but like maybe they're getting excited and want to go on a Baja? Like, what would you tell them? Just in Baja in terms of experience.
I mean, I would tell them to plan for the unexpected going to Baja, because you never know. Bring the spares and the stuff that you need. Make sure that your vehicle is equipped. Baja will not and is not forgiving. It will eat you up, and you could have the best vehicle ever, and you could have issues down there. But it's just so beautiful. Like you said, it's just an amazing place. Like, around every corner is new adventure in Baja. I would say, get a good group of friends, get a good chase guy that knows the stuff. Maybe take somebody that's been there before, and you're going to be able to explore some things and see some things that you normally wouldn't see in the States. It's gorgeous down there, and it's just weird. It's kind of people haven't been there, people haven't experienced it. It's a feeling. Baja is like alive. It's kind of like Disneyland for side-by-side riders, Disneyland for off-road enthusiasts, because it's just like, it's the ultimate. As you said earlier, Nick, like the Baja 500, the Baja 1000, those are the big off-road races. That is the thing. Like, if you can say that you've raced it, that's a check mark. If you can say that you've won it, it's another check mark. But it's a whole other thing just to say, I went down there and I rode that course. Like, I've been there, I've done that. I know what those guys went through. As you mentioned, you were able to hear them talk about different sections. You're like, man, I was there. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know. And so, yeah, anybody that's planning to go down there, man, just be prepared and be ready to plan your next trip after you get done with that one, because it'll grab a hold of you. It's a part of you. You feel alive when you're there, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Yeah, speaking of planning, we're going to do a part 2 to our Baja video where I'm going to kind of go through using, the Onyx Off-Road app, and then what I think you can think of when you want to plan your big ride. Like, we do as many of these big adventure rides as we can, and a lot of people on the channel ask, like, hey, can you invite me on that ride? And also, like, what does it take to go do Arizona Peace Trail? So, I think that's a big question. I think a lot of UTV owners have gone to their local rides. They're looking for that big adventure, right? That's why you kind of get into the sport. And there's no place like Baja. Arizona Peace Trail is really rad. Trip I've done down from Puerto Penasco to El Golfo was really, really cool. Moab is really cool. But you have to think differently. You have to drive at a different pace. You have to have a different level of preparation. Otherwise, honestly, it's hard to invite people who are so newbie that you don't think that they're going to have a good chance if they don't understand they need to drive at a 500-mile pace. They don't understand their car needs to be dialed with good tires, with good prep, blah, 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 because you don't want to babysit somebody. Some of these rides, you do want to have a chase driver in case things happen, because it can happen to anybody's car, even the most well-prepped I've seen. All kinds of weird issues that I've not even seen in racers, or my years working for Polaris, going to Camp Razor 5 or 6, 7 times. Like, unexpected things happen. So, I think this next vid will be fun. Kind of deeper dive into the app and have a good GPS setup, because you really do need a good navigation. And I kind of had I had a lot of help using the race course for the most part of our ride, because it's my first time leading a ride in Baja. And there's a lot of other things. Like you said, Baja is alive. It's alive with a fast fire road, and there's a guy coming the other way with a big truck or a razor, or guys on bicycles and cows and a raptor getting stuck in the middle of the race course. Like, you really don't know what you're going to see. And, at the end of the day, you really want to have that adventure, but you need to be safe. You want to have a safe run. You want to have a clean run.
Yes.
You want to be able to say, I clicked off 500 miles in 3 days. Like, we were able to. And,
right.
I got a leaky front diff, but, car loaded into the trailer, and, we didn't really lose anything. We had the full experience. So that's all you can do.
I agree. I'm going to piggyback on that. Everybody has their group that they ride with. They have their guys that they ride with, and everybody has that one guy I wouldn't suggest that Baja is the place to take that one guy. The one guy that's Ricky Racer that's trying to be the fastest guy and beat the crap out of it. Because as Nick said, a 500-mile pace is much different than let's go to the sand dunes. We're leaving camp. We're going to go to Vendor Row and come back, So that's part of Baja. When you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, when I say it's the middle of nowhere, it's the middle of nowhere. So Baja fixes. You can't have too many hose clamps, zip ties, duct tape, wire. Can't have too much of that stuff in your toolbox when you go out there.
Yeah, no doubt. So, well, cool. Thanks everyone for checking it out. This pod, Wes, is fun always chatting, talking Baja. We got to plan our trip. Where I'm really bummed you weren't a part of our ride, but we got to just plan another one and get back down there. I mean, whenever I get this speed, whenever that happens, I want to take it down to Baja and see how she holds. There's a couple times one of the guys on our rides, one of my buddies, Fred, has some 35s. By the way, people, Razor Turbo S, 3,500 miles, been running 35-inch tires since day one. He has not burnt one belt. He knows how to drive. He's not a slowpoke. He's about it. The 35, we were jealous of the 35s in a lot of different spots. That's kind of one of the reasons why I'm most excited about the speed, because it looks like it's finally a UTV that's built for 35s, and ground clearance would have been rad, but my 33s were awesome as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Killer time, man. The video rocks. I'm excited for the time where I can go with you guys again.
Cool, man. Well, good catching up with you. Thanks everyone for listening. If you guys like the content, please like and subscribe. Check out our website, Chupacabra Offroad, and we have some exciting new products we're working on. We're going to be doing some photo shoots for that pretty soon and releasing. And hopefully, if you guys are in Southern California, come see us at the Sand Show. It's coming up in September. Really excited on that event. Really trying to plan now, so we show up with some cool products, some stuff you wouldn't expect from us, some exciting new versions of what you have seen. And it's a good show. Very few times of the year, Wes, we get to like hang out and we're talking to you virtually, but like, it's so fun to go to Glamis and shake hands with people who are, like what we do and are just fans of whatever, enthusiasts. And the Sand Show's gonna be one of those events. So Wes and I are going to be chatty Cathy's, ready to hang out and see some of you guys in real life and talk shop. And hopefully we talk Baja, we talk Glamis, we talk whatever. So I'm really looking forward to that event.
Me too. Can't wait, man. It's coming up quick.
All right. We're signing off until next time. We'll see you.